Hello and welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute-a-day podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse, recorded here in the dining room of the Bible Bistro, located in Sharonville, Ohio. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Daily Dose Radio here in the Bible Bistro. Well, today we come to the end of Psalm 105, the Psalm of Remembrance. Remember, that's the key word, and we're going to actually have that key word again here in the passage today. We'll talk about that as we go forward. This has been a psalm of remembering, and he specifically takes up the Exodus period. And we've been in Exodus from Exodus chapter 1 to Exodus chapter 16 this week, remembering all that God has done. We're going to continue to remember some events from Exodus today, Exodus chapter 17 and 32. So we have all this remembering going on, and of course, the exercise of remembering is good for us because as we remember all that God has done, then we can give Him thanks, and we can look forward to what He might do for us as well, according to His promise, according to that which is revealed in His Word. Not something that we've generated or considered or thought up or dreamed up on our own, but what He has said in His Word for us. Let me read verses 41 through 45. He opened the rock, and the waters gushed out. They ran in the dry places like a river. He remembered His holy promise, and Abraham His servant. He brought forth His people with joy, and His chosen with gladness. He gave them the lands of the heathen, and they inherited the labor of the people, that they might observe His statutes and keep His laws. Praise ye the Lord. All right. So He opened the rock. You remember that Paul said the rock that followed them around was Christ. Well, He's opened the rock and the waters gushed out. The rock provides. Jesus Christ is the provision, ladies and gentlemen. He is the great need. He is the great provider. He is the great provision of all that we have. He opened the rock and the waters gushed out. They ran in the dry places like a river. Now you can imagine they are in a wilderness. Now, it's a desert wilderness. The Sinai area is desolate. It's dry. It gets very little water every year. And here we have the rock gushing out water, and it runs in places like a river. Isn't that amazing? So the millions of people that came out of Egypt can have a drink, and they do it along this river that God just makes in a wilderness where no rivers are. So He makes a river there for His people. Why did He do it? Because He remembered. Verse 42, for He remembered His holy promise. Now, I've told you that this psalm is a psalm of remembrance, and we go back to verse 5, and in verse 5 we're told, remember His marvelous works. Okay, so very first thing out of the box, in the chamber of imperatives there in verses 1 through 5, we have this command to remember. Remember His marvelous works. And then in verse 8 it says, He has remembered His covenant forever, the word which He commanded to 1,000 generations. And then when we come over here to the end of the psalm, in verse 42 it says, He remembered His holy promise. So you see, we're only told to remember once. It says that God has always remembered. He has remembered His promises of old, and He remembered specifically His holy promise and Abraham His servant, because it was to Abraham that He made the promise. And the promise He made to Abraham was for the entirety of Abraham's children, right? For Isaac's children, for Jacob's children, those that became the nation. God did that. In verse 43, He brought forth His people with joy and His chosen with gladness. Yes, here we have the word chosen. This is God's work. He chooses a people for Himself in the Old Testament. He chooses a people for Himself in the New Testament. And so God is choosing and bringing forth those that He chose with gladness. He gave them the lands of the heathen, and they inherited the labor of the people. Of course, we're talking about Exodus 17 when He opens the rock, and Exodus 3 when He remembers His promise, And then Exodus 32 as well. We also have, God remembering or giving them the lands of the heathen there. Numbers through Joshua is all about him giving the lands of the heathen to the people. And this is also repeated in Psalm 78, verse 55. And then the entire goal is what? That they might observe his statutes and keep his laws. So as we remember all that God has done for the people, as we reflect on his goodness to them and all of his marvelous works that are recorded for us in this psalm, we too might observe his statutes and keep his laws, because the Lord remembers. So let us remember and let us obey. Praise ye the Lord. Join me again next week as we look at Psalm 106 here on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. For more fresh and delicious Bible studies, podcasts, books, and more, check out the Bible Bistro online and on YouTube. Join me again next time for Daily Dose Radio.